Thank you, Pastor John and Susan, for putting on this amazing 4-week school. My name is Dr. Nate Gershfeld. I'm a chiropractor. And I know I look young. Chef AJ's got her own ideas about things. But I promise you, this talk's going to last, about an hour or so until Chef AJ, till Shada's going to come and do her demo. But also because my mom's coming to pick me up at 8, and so I have to be out of there. All right, so today's talk is about living healthy in an unhealthy world. And really what it is, it's a story of balance and where we're coming out of balance in today's world. So I run the Fasting Escape Retreat Center, it's a mini True North Health Center where we get people inside and we lock them up. And we do water fasting, we do healthy eating, sometimes juice fasting if that's necessary. And they recover their health in a variety of different ways, a lot of different conditions that we see. And we have some excellent cooking instructors that you're going to get to see today. And we have some excellent lectures that you may have seen before. But today what we're going to talk about is how the world has changed. So in the 1900s, the leading causes of death were all due to bacterial contamination. The top 3 were due to bacterial contamination. So we had pneumonia, tuberculosis, and enteritis of the intestines. So living healthy in an unhealthy world back then meant that you had to make sure that everything was clean, that you washed your hands, and you made sure that your doctor was washing their hands. As it turns out, this was discovered in the late 1800s and early 1900s, which was doctors were performing autopsies and then delivering babies right afterwards. And then they were surprised why women who were delivering babies with the doctors versus the midwives, why they were dying at a higher rate. The person who figured this out was shamed, beaten, eventually committed to a psychiatric hospital, and he eventually died. Okay? So living healthy back then was quite a different challenge than it is today. Today, our challenge is a little bit different. So what we're going to see here is, this is a graph. It's a map of the United States in 1985. And it displays the amount of people, the percentage of the population that are obese. So the light blue is less than 10%, the dark blue is 10 to 14%. So we're going to watch how this changes as time goes on. 1986, we started to get more data, but as we get more data, we see that more of the population is becoming obese. Okay, 1988, 89, 1990. By 1991, we needed a whole new color. Okay, now we have the dark blue, which is 15 to 19% of the population is obese. Okay, 92, 93. By 1994, every state had data, but one other thing that's been interesting is the first color that we started with is now gone. Okay, that's interesting. 1995, 1996. Notice we get a new color the following year. Okay, now this is greater than 20% of the population is consistently overeating, and they are becoming obese. Okay, 98. 99, 2000. By 2000, we have one state hanging on for the first 2 colors. Okay, anybody know what state that is? It's Colorado. Okay, by 2001, it gets swallowed up. Okay, 2002, we needed a 5th color now, and the first 2 colors are now gone. Okay, 2003, 2004, 2005. Another color, right? Greater than 30%. 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. We can see what's happened in our world. It is completely changed. This is the first step was the light blue colors, and now it's almost unrecognizable. It's very similar if we were going to see an epidemic of bacterial contamination happening. So we're dealing with a similar conceptual problem as we did in the 1900s, but now it's about obesity. Now, it's not just obesity. We see diabetes as well. Okay, this is the similar graph, and the darker the color, the higher the what's called HbA1c, which is the long-term measurement of blood sugar. Okay, 95, 96. Notice the darker the color, the higher people have rates of diabetes. Okay, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. Right, we see a very particular trend where the diabetes is slightly slower than the obesity, but it mimics the same pattern. Today, as a result of this, the causes of death are completely different. They are almost all related to this obesity problem, okay? So we're going to talk about what's actually at play here. And before we do, we're going to try to identify this structure here. Does anybody have any guesses as to what this is? Oh, I know what you guys are thinking. I've probably taken some lessons from Dr. Doug Lyle. It turns out his tutelage has been so successful that he's turned me from a starving artist into a fasting artist. So yes, this is a telescope. I heard that somewhere over there. This is the Hubble telescope. And what we've identified with these play on lenses is that we can see things from great distances. Something that could take us days of walking to go see, we can actually see it immediately. Okay? And so we've made great strides. And on the other hand, we've invented a microscope where now we can see things at a minute level, all the way down to the electron. It's incredible. And so the question that we're going to try to answer today is, if we're so good at everything, which we are in the world, why aren't we that good at controlling our health? And the answer we can see from this bird's nest. Now, why are there 4 eggs in this bird's nest? It's balance, right? If it's not balanced, it's going to fall off. Why is the mom and dad bird on both sides of the nest? Balance, right? And why do we look in a pond and we see all the fish looking for the mosquitoes, and there's very few fish where there's no mosquitoes? Balance, right? You know, so I'm an engineer by trade. This is how engineers make talks, okay? It's all got to be balanced, okay? Why does the chicken cross the road from this side to the other side? Balance, right? So after engineering, I decided to become a chiropractor and really impress my mom, and yeah. So now I'm in my office, and I see so many people, and they have problems. Okay, so this is a pretty common problem that walks into my office. People are complaining about back pain. And of course, why are they complaining about back pain? What do you guys think? Did I hear balance? It's balance, right? But it's what kind of balance? What's out of balance? Core strength, yeah, right? It's not that they're balancing on a slack line and falling and hurting themselves. The reason why most people in my office are out of balance is because they're sitting all day long. Okay, they're throwing themselves out of balance. What's another problem that might go out of balance that will hurt your back? Lifestyle, right? What kind of lifestyle? Sedentary, right? If we gain extra weight, all of a sudden we've got more pressure on our backs. Okay? This is a big problem nowadays. And the truth is that 80% of people in the USA are dealing with some sort of low back pain. Okay? Almost 100% of people are dealing with some sort of body pain, whether it's neck pain, thoracic pain, low back pain, or joint pain. And it turns out if you don't feel pain, this kind of pain in your lifetime, you're abnormal. Okay? So when I was a kid, my dad liked to give me and my sisters nicknames. So Sarah, Hannah's my older sister. She's the one on the very end there. She's very sweet, so he calls her Humble Hannah. My sister, the one in the middle, she's Sassy Sarah. But me, I'm Simple Nate. Okay, and I think simple. It's because I didn't invent any iPods. I didn't invent any, engineering things. Engineering was fun. It was great. I enjoyed it, but I liked simple things. And it turns out that I think simple. And while every single scientist out there, whether it's back or belly or chronic disease or acute illness, they're trying to figure out every little specific cause and every little problem that's going on with people's lives, I will submit to you that the problem that we're dealing with today is balance. Okay, now, when I was in college, I worked at the dining hall, so I was kind of a waiter. And it was very interesting. I would go to people, pour, make sure they had enough water, iced tea, or whatever it was. And it was very interesting. They would make all kinds of noises when things were out of balance. Okay, if their glass wasn't as full, I'd like some more water. Okay, and they'd say it's too little. When you start pouring the water, what do you feel? Okay, that's enough. Okay, they don't wait till it's right at the edge of the glass. They wait till it's a little bit close to that. Then they say it's too much. Okay, so we're going to talk about the different pillars of health where people mostly get out of balance. And if we do these things and bring them back into balance, it turns out that health is the result. Okay, so number one, exercise. Now, just to guess, what do you think is out of balance in exercise? Are we having too much exercise? Or are we getting not enough exercise? Not enough, okay? We're not getting enough exercise, and it turns out that everybody's worried that if they start exercising and curling the weights and running, they're going to get too much, okay? They're going to throw themselves out of balance. It turns out that if we look at our ancestors, they could run up to 16 miles a day, searching for food and hunting for food. And yet we are thinking that if we run, if we do some exercise for long periods of time, we might get out of balance. So what have you guys heard in terms of what are some reasonable exercise goals, every day, every week? What do you guys think? What was that? 10,000 steps, okay. What else? What else? You guys have probably heard 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, 2, 3, maybe 4 times a week, all perfectly reasonable. But keep in mind that these guys ran 16 miles a day. So you can exercise quite a bit, even up to an hour a day of strenuous exercise and not get out of balance, okay? Now, if it turns out you're running marathons every weekend, now you might be getting out of balance because it depresses the immune system and it can be very difficult for your body. So we want to make sure we stay in balance with our bodies, and don't worry, it's very unlikely that you're going to get too much. Okay, next is sleep. What do you guys think? Are we getting too much sleep or not enough, right? We're not getting enough sleep, right? In the age of our ancestors, sleep was a natural occurrence that you quieted down, went to a dark place so that predators can't find you. And sleep is a way that your body cleans out the debris that you've accumulated throughout the entire day of thinking and working. And so when you wake up and you're tired, what you're actually experiencing is a dirty brain that hasn't had enough time to clear itself. Okay, that's what it feels like to have a dirty brain, is to feel tired. But what do people do nowadays instead of sleeping or resting when they're tired? Yeah. They drink coffee. Coffee it blocks the signal to your brain that you're tired. And so what you're doing is you're not addressing the cause of the problem. And you're not sleeping, and you're getting more and more tired. It turns out that when people are sleep deprived, for example, they're sleeping less than 6 to 7 hours per night, they have 40% higher rates of Alzheimer's, 50% higher rates of cardiovascular disease, and all kinds of different other problems, okay? So we have to bring our sleep back into balance, and if we don't, we will suffer, okay? One of the ways we can bring our sleep back into balance is to make our area of sleep as consistent with our natural history as possible. So we keep a dark room. We keep it quiet. We don't keep it too hot. We don't keep it too cool. We keep it in balance. All right, emotional support. Now, what do you think? Do we have too much love or we have not enough? Right? Yeah. So it's also a problem of the natural world today compared to the age of our ancestors. we have to forge these connections with people that we meet, like, and love, because if we don't, we're going to be left alone in this world. We don't have the same tension as we used to sacrifice for each other and create bonds, and so a group like this is fantastic. It's very rare to see so many people all together in one particular room trying to figure out what they can do for your health. So build those bonds and have people around you that support what you do rather than antagonizing what you do. Okay, that's going to be an important part of balancing your health. Okay, diet. Completely out of balance, right? Are we getting too much food or not enough? Too much. But when people start to get on a different diet, their big anxiety is, what about my protein, right? Or where am I going to get my calcium from? Or where am I going to get this? Or where am I going to get that? Where am I going to get this? I want you to imagine what life was like a few generations ago. There was no abundance of food. Okay? The name of the game was scarcity. Your main job every day was to not get eaten and get enough to eat. So it's going to turn out that it's no wonder that we have anxiety about getting enough. Okay, this is normal, this is natural. But I have to tell you is that the diet that we're going to be eating now, a whole natural foods, plant foods diet, gets you plenty of everything, okay, with a couple exceptions. But essentially, what we see is that in the natural world, this is what we were doing. We were foraging for food all day long and hunting as necessary, okay, but we were mostly foraging for food. This was the shopping trip, okay? Today, it's a little bit different. This is me in a grocery store. And it's, sometimes I really have to handcuff myself because the things in the middle, they place them right in the middle of things, you know? Like you can't even go and get apples anymore without there being apple chips in the middle or caramel dip, which I've never eaten, I promise. You know, another thing I saw, I was in the grocery store, and I realized that they make it very easy for us to eat foods that are not conducive to our health. And at first when I saw this, I thought it was a coupon for diabetes. Like if you buy the Pop-Tarts, you get the diabetes for free. Turns out, it's a coupon for diabetes medications. And the marketers, with their great insight, know where the people who have diabetes shop. Okay. So a little tip, if you're shopping in an aisle and you see all these coupons for medications, I might be in the wrong aisle, okay? Where else would we expect to see this around October time? Right, okay? We see this in the candy aisle. We never see this in the kale aisle, yeah. People are eating today completely out of balance. They're eating about 90% of their calories coming from animal foods or refined carbohydrates. That's in the form of candies, cookies, pastries, breads, pastas, etc. And the point is that, you know, not everyone may go completely the other way, like the longest living societies on Earth do. So the longest living societies on Earth, they eat about 95% the other way, which is a whole plant foods diet. And although many people in the world are not going to do that in the developed world, what we want to do is keep moving the needle forward, okay? Because if we don't, there comes a point where we are going to become so out of balance that our body creates these diseases. Heart disease, cancer, stroke, high blood pressure, obesity, chronic pain, things like dementia, Alzheimer's. You know, all this work that we've done to enjoy our retirement years, it all goes to waste if we end up having to spend the last 10 years of our life in and out of hospital beds and in and out of surgeries. And it really does undermine our happiness in our life. Okay, so these are the four things. The fifth thing is sunshine, okay? Not that big of a deal, especially in a place like California, but we want to make sure that sunshine is in balance. So we can test our vitamin D and make sure we're getting enough sunshine. And so that's the 5 things, okay? But I'm not here to talk about those 5 things. I'm here to talk about the final piece. So the final piece, let's go back and take a look. What happens to this guy most of the time that he goes hunting? Yeah, he comes back with nothing. Okay, he comes back with 0. Okay, what's his insurance policy? Fat. Fat is nature's insurance policy. It turns out that if you have excess weight, you are exactly where you're supposed to be in nature, because nature never had an abundance of food for very often. It was feast and famine. And so if you've developed this insurance policy, what you have to realize is that fat is nature's balancing act. It balances the time to prevent starvation. And as it turns out, this gets people back into balance, okay? Now, it turns out that as we've been able to kind of understand nature in better detail, we can realize that when people have fat, they can bring themselves back into balance by eating healthy. But another piece is that when people can't eat, they enter a state of what's called fasting. And the definition of fasting is where you are abstaining from all food and drink except for pure water in a period of complete rest. And this is what our ancestors did when they didn't have enough food. And it turns out that even if our pets are sick, even if we are sick, we might have a raging infection, there's no appetite at all. Okay, we've seen this in our children, we've seen this in our pets, and we see this constantly, is that when we are sick, when we have too much, we actually don't feel like eating. Okay, if we don't feel like eating whole natural foods, that's the time to fast. And so what we see is that fasting is the way that your body brings itself back into balance. Okay, it has success in things like fibroid tumors, high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, type 2 diabetes, all kinds of things that have been published in the data in the recent few decades. And so it turns out that this is the way that the body can get back into balance. And the way this works in a couple of different ways. So the first thing is when people fast, they have weight loss. How many people are surprised by that? Right? What kind of a chiropractor is going to be here saying, oh, 100% of people that do a fast are going to lose weight? Okay? Turns out, pound a day. Okay? The second thing is something called naturesis. This is related to high blood pressure because most people who have high blood pressure have such high blood pressure because of the salt intake. And so naturesis allows your body to release a lot of the extra salt that's been retained. And the way we found this out is my mentor, named Dr. Alan Goldhammer. He had a question. He was seeing that his patients at True North Health Center, the Center for Conservative Therapy, were having a consistent lowering of their high blood pressure. And this was incredibly interesting because it was measurable. He's a very smart person, but he also understands that just because he says something doesn't mean it's true. So he wanted to measure this in the most objective way possible, and that was with blood pressure. And it turns out that this was about 20 years ago. So it turns out that at the time, what helped with lowering blood pressure, there's a couple of things. Limiting alcohol would lower blood pressure about 5 points or so. Okay, we're talking about the top number just for the purposes of this slide. But the bottom numbers are very similar, except when we get to the bottom. So limiting alcohol decreases blood pressure about 5 points. Exercise decreases about 7 points. It turns out that drugs, so hypertension drugs, blood pressure lowering medications, lower at about 12 points. So it's no surprise that when you go to your doctor and they say, hey, just drink less alcohol, exercise a little bit more, and whether people do it or don't, they really just give you the drugs. Well, one of the bigger things that affects blood pressure is salt intake, which lowers your blood pressure by about 16 points. And by the way, the reason why drugs have to lower it by 12 points is that drugs have risks with them. And the level of high blood pressure, the blood pressure has to be 160 over 100 before the risks outweigh the benefits. So you have a lot of people with very high blood pressure that's not sufficient to justify the blood pressure medication. And so instead, if we have them limit alcohol, exercise, reduce salt intake, they can get quite a bit of a drop without the drugs. Now, Dr. John McDougall, saw some of his books out there, fantastic study he did, showed that with healthy diet and exercise and a low-fat, low-salt vegan diet, you can lower your blood pressure about 17 points. It's incredible, almost 50% better than the drugs. And Dr. Goldhammer had a study. He had 174 consecutive patients come in. They fasted for an average of 11 days. Fasted for an average of 11 days, and the average blood pressure drop was 37 points. It's incredible. And in the category of people who had the most serious blood pressure, it was over 60 points. Incredible. And so this really makes fasting one of the best ways to lower your blood pressure naturally without drugs. Okay, especially when healthy diet and exercise are very hard to come by, okay, for reasons we're going to talk about in a second. But the other benefits of fasting are things like detoxification, enzyme induction. If you feel worn and run down, a fast is a great way to get back to the basics and just relax, let your body take care of the rest of the work. Okay, insulin resistance. Turns out type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance go hand in hand. So when blood sugar is sufficiently high for a sufficiently long period of time, your body adapts. And now your body gets resistant to the insulin that's trying to shuttle the glucose into the cells. And if you get insulin resistant for long enough, your pancreas has problems, you have blood sugar control problems, and you may have to get on medication. Because if you don't, the blood sugar is getting high enough in your eyes, your neurons and your nephrons, and you've got kidney problems, you're going to have peripheral neuropathy, and it's not a very fun life. From there, it's the leading cause of blindness in the world, is diabetes. Okay? We routinely see patients at the Fasting Escape with type 2 diabetes or elevated blood sugar that get their blood sugar back under control. Gut leakage. Gut leakage is implicated in autoimmune disease. If we look at our digestive tract, it's a tube from one end to the other. And it represents a little mesh, almost like a screen door. And if you loosen that mesh, now all of a sudden molecules go through the mesh that are not supposed to be there. And if your body reacts, then we can start to create an autoimmune disease. So what fasting does is it tightens this up. Okay, it relaxes the gut lining, removes food from there, and lets the body heal itself more effectively. Normalizing sympathetic tone. This is another way of saying that people are stressed. Okay, there's two different nervous systems that are at play here. You're being chased by the tiger constantly, or nowadays it's your boss is yelling at you all the time. This allows your body to take a rest, a break, and a relaxing balance. Okay, and there's spiritual reasons, as Pastor John mentioned, immune system enhancement. And the biggest problem, which is taste neuroadaptation. Okay, remember this graph here? Why did this happen? It turns out that when we look at our taste buds and we consider what we've done with our food supply, it's no surprise that we've increased the obesity so much. And it turns out that your taste buds get sensitive and they actually enjoy foods that are more concentrated. How many people like baked potatoes here? Okay. How many people like potato chips? All right? Potato chips are about almost 10 times more concentrated than potatoes because of the oil. So the more concentrated a food is, the tastier it is. And the more of this concentrated food that we eat, the more we get used to it. And the more we get used to it, the harder it is to get back to healthy food. And it's going to turn out that taste buds work very similar to any sensory organ that we have, including eyes and ears. So I want you to imagine we're in this room right now, and we go outside, okay, and there's some street lights. It's going to look dark and dim. It's going to look dark and dim for a few minutes, but after a few minutes, our eyes are going to adjust, and it's going to be nice and, it's not going to be that bright, but we're going to adjust to it. Okay, this is what happens with any sensory organ. If you get in a car and listen to the radio all day long through the traffic, you're going to have to keep cranking it up, keep cranking it up, keep cranking it up till you get home. Now the radio is a lot louder than you expect, and you turn it off, you go to sleep. The next morning you wake up, you turn on the car, all of a sudden it's way too loud. It was that loud the night before, your ears just adjusted to it. In this same way, your taste buds are used to high calorie, high fat, high salt, high sugar foods. And so now you go to a place like Fasting Escape and we feed you food that doesn't have any salt, oil, or sugar in it, it's going to taste kind of awful. It's going to taste pretty awful. And so that process can take, if you just ate the food, It can take 1 to 3 months for your taste buds to readapt, for the food to actually start to taste pretty good. But with the fast, you can short circuit that to less than a week. And this is why people struggle so much with trying to eat a healthy diet, because the good foods actually don't taste that good. And the bad foods taste phenomenal. Okay? Fasting is the way we bring this back into balance. Okay? By all these 10 things: weight loss, natriuresis, lower the high blood pressure, eliminate that risk, detoxification mechanisms, activate some of these enzymes, clean house. Okay, we take care of the insulin resistance, we take care of the gut leakage, normalize the nervous system, some psychospiritual aspects, enhance your immune system, okay, and improve your taste buds so that healthy foods actually taste good. All of these things fasting does, and it's actually doing nothing. Okay, you're actually doing nothing at all other than simply not eating in an environment of complete rest. It's a spectacular way to get better. And the best part is it's completely simple. And you know what? That fits me perfectly. All right, so that is the 6 things that we need to do to bring ourselves back into balance. And all these 5 things, the exercise, sleep, the emotional support, the diet, the sunshine, those are things that you can do on your own. Okay, to bring yourself back into balance. You work hard at these things. You practice. By no means do you have to be perfect. Okay, everybody's in different stages in terms of how far they're willing to go, how far they can go. But the truth is that if it's not enough, if you're struggling and you can't do it by yourself, then perhaps it's time to maybe consider a fast. And the fast is the way to bring yourself back into balance and get the life that you deserve and the life that you desire. Thank you very much. You guys have been great. Question?
Yeah, how long of a fast? With just water?
Yeah, so the question is, how long do we fast? The answer is it depends on everybody. Okay, everybody has a different health history and different time frame they can do it. The longest fast that I've personally supervised with patients is 42 days. It's a little bit unbelievable that someone can last this long. This person had many reserves, so they could, but the average person may benefit from a week-long fast, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what the condition is. Typically, what we look at is acute conditions. Maybe you just want to rest and relax and reboot, maybe less than a week of fasting. If it's more of a major acute problem, then we do 1 to 2 weeks of fasting. And if it's a chronic problem, then we do 2, 3+ weeks of fasting. What we do though is we want to make sure that the kidneys are healthy enough to handle a fast. So we do blood work and urinalysis before the fast begins to make sure that that we have good baseline data. And then we do that every week as the fast continues to make sure that things are continuing to be monitored and we're doing it correctly. Good question though. Question?
So, if you are healthy, and you've already been doing all those things, and you want to incorporate fasting into your lifestyle, hello? There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you already are a healthy person and you want to incorporate fasting into your lifestyle, mm-hmm. How would you do that? Once a week? There's lots of options to do that.
Right. There's a lot of, the question was, there's a lot of options for fasting. Typically, what you want to consider is when you know that you need to fast is when healthy food actually starts to taste bland. Okay, that's how we know. And when I say healthy food, I mean fruits, vegetables, steamed vegetables, potatoes, rice, and beans, whole plant foods free of extra additives and stimulants like sweeteners, salty foods, spicy foods, oil, salt, and sugar, and flour. Okay, so if you're eating whole natural foods and they taste pretty good, you're on the right track. But if it turns out that someone makes you a plate of steamed broccoli, plate of steamed carrots, some Swiss chard, a plain baked potato, a sweet potato, a brown rice, whatever it is, and you taste it and you're like, this needs a little bit of teriyaki sauce on it, that's probably a signal that, if you don't have health problems, I actually don't care about that. But if it turns out that you're like trying to really, be at optimal level, then you may want to fast so that the healthy foods actually taste good enough to eat on their own. But as far as, fasting once a week, doing the intermittent fasting or any other type of options, the truth is that I see a lot of people wanting to do like a once a week type of fast or, a 12-hour window or whatever it is. Those are all perfectly reasonable and fine, but we can't forget what the point of this is, and that is to eat a healthy diet. Okay, our ancestors fasted when they absolutely needed to, and right now I fast people when they therapeutically absolutely need to. If people feel better fasting once a week, no problem, but let's not forget that the point of this is to get your taste buds so that healthy food actually tastes good and that you can stick on a healthy diet long term or as best as you can. Okay, so does that answer your question? Yeah. Close enough? Yeah, tell me more.
So for example, certain religions don't eat Friday night through Saturday night. So there's, and I understand what, the fast that you're talking about. So you don't have any well, we've seen studies, for example, where people that fast, once a week or once a month for 3 days, so there's nothing that other than going to your center, and because I can't do that.
Right.
I have to work.
Yeah, so what you do
like
is,
that, right?
yeah, what you do is
it's not an option. So what else can I do, I guess is the question.
Yeah, what you do is you just eat the food. That's the best thing you can do. And then when you feel tired and run down, you take a weekend off and just do a short fast, maybe a day or two. But it's not something I would recommend to incorporate as part of a normal healthy diet, because you really don't need to. If you felt the need to fast, you feel a little run down, perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable. And you don't need to do a long fast either. You can do, Friday night, eat, a plate of steamed vegetables or raw salad, and then you go all through Saturday just fasting and then break it on Sunday. That's perfectly fine. But I always, when people start trying to do a routine thing where it's like once a month they fast or once a week, we really want to figure out why is that happening? Why do people feel so run down that they have to fast every month? And the answer is typically, from just what I see with patients, is that they're not quite there in terms of the health of the food, and so, or they're drinking coffee, or they're not sleeping enough, and so they're constantly getting run down. We don't want to use fasting as a medication, where you take it and then you go back to your normal lifestyle. Okay? Because then we're making a conceptual mistake. We want to use it therapeutically so you get better, get healthier on the way to a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle. Okay? Other questions? Yep.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
What about, when you have a water fast, what about your electrolytes? Don't you need electrolytes?
Yes.
When you do that?
Yeah, so you do need electrolytes. Your body has plenty of reserves. The average person can go for several weeks of fasting. And fasting is not the same as starvation. It's starvation begins when fasting ends. And so we are taking everybody through a fast, and your body is using up the reserves as it's going through this healing process. We check blood to make sure that the electrolytes are in balance. And if electrolytes are out of balance, then we break the fast. Question?
What are you doing during your recreational time? What are you doing during your recreational time during this retreat, if that's...
Oh, during fasting? Fasting is a miserable process. I hate to say it. I mean, it's intense. It's miserable. You're essentially detoxifying all the things that you've accumulated over maybe several decades. So most people in the beginning of their fast, they may feel a little more energetic and a little more clear as their stomach is emptying. But if they go on longer, people are quite miserable. They lay in bed, they rest, they relax, they try to sleep. They're bored. Their back hurts. They have foul taste in their mouth. They really just try to socialize and suffer together. But there's a lot of entertainment. We have a yoga class, once a week, like a stretching class once a week, but there isn't a lot. Shada comes and does a demo when people are not fasting, because it's a little bit cruel to make food in front of them while they're fasting. But yeah, fasting is designed so that you're staying in your complete rest, in a period of complete rest, so that we use the energy for healing rather than for burning muscles. And if you exercise while you're fasting, it turns out that you double your electrolyte utilization, and so that can run into some serious problems if people, for instance, will do a fast while they're exercising for several days in a row. So yeah, we try to get people to rest as much as possible. Question?
Just stand,
What about preparing, after the fast? Because the main thing, people go back to their old environment.
Right.
And they have these cravings, or they have the family at home. So are you also preparing them with tools when they come home, so they keep that lifestyle, or not that lifestyle, but I mean, making changes? Because 30 years ago, I did fasting 5 to 7 days, and it was a great journey. And for a lot of people in the books, what I read, it's a lot of people's like, oh my God, I want my hamburger again. And, and that's the worst thing you can do after fasting. So a lot of people go back to their old habits. So.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. It turns out that for some people, the pleasure trap is stronger than others. And what we do is we keep them there for about half the length of the fast, so that people can gradually reintroduce healthy foods and whole natural foods. And if they fast long enough, then they can come home and they actually lose some of the cravings. Okay? What we're talking about is a momentum shift. Okay? We're breaking the cycle of constantly eating processed, unnatural foods. Fasting is a really unique way to reset the taste buds, so that if you did eat the cheeseburger or the cheesecake or something like that, it actually would taste too rich. Okay? And so we don't want people to do that. So, we try to educate them. I do a couple of lectures about, different topics during their time there. We've got, good information there, but it's ultimately up to the person who's trying to do this. It can be very difficult to be perfect at this, and I don't know very many people who are perfect at it at all. But a fast can sometimes help to break that cycle if people have been in a bad rut of eating unhealthy foods and not being able to carve their way out of it. Okay. Other question?
Excuse me. Absolutely. No worries. If, as far as somebody that is thin and then starts off, you have no issue with them going 7 days then as well?
No, we would do a full health history and blood panel, make sure everything else is okay. But yeah, a short fast is no problem. People will gain some of the weight back if they're too thin. They'll go back to their ideal weight. But yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, short is exactly. So short is 7 days, whereas some people think a short fast is 12 hours or a day. Yeah. Question.
You mentioned the effects on high blood pressure fasting. So you mentioned the effects of high blood pressure on fasting. How long are those effects? How long do they last?
So the Dr. Goldhammer study, they followed up with people for 24 weeks. So 6 months later, they followed up. And it turns out that if people stick on the diet, the blood pressure effects stay there. Okay, so you can maintain your benefit. And that's the whole point, is that fasting can help bring the blood pressure down. But if we go back to eating a salty diet, rich in animal foods, then the blood pressure is going to go right back to being abnormal. So it's a great way to start the process and then continue the process by eating healthy. Yeah. Question.
How do you protect against losing lean body mass and damaging metabolism?
Okay. Good question. So how do we protect against losing lean body mass? We don't need to protect against it. Your body, it starts to get into something called ketosis, where your body is actually burning fat. It's favoring fat rather than muscle. Okay, so your body has glycogen reserves, it's got fat reserves. And so then it starts to use the fat rather than anything else. There's a little bit of protein loss as you go through a fast, but it's very minimal. And what was the second question? Oh, metabolism. Got it. Everybody's wondering how to make their metabolism faster, but metabolism is really the age at which your cells, the speed at which your cells are aging. So we really don't want to make your metabolism faster or slower. Your metabolism is the way it is. And most of the time when I hear this question about metabolism, it's kind of behind an anxiety of gaining weight and eating foods that'll make you gain weight because you have a low metabolism. And the truth is that if you eat whole natural foods, it doesn't matter your metabolism or not. It's impossible to gain weight if you eat foods free of salt, oil, sugar, and they're whole natural foods. Okay.
I'm asking because my understanding is that if you limit your food intake too much, it would possibly reset the metabolism lower, making it more likely for you to gain unwanted weight.
Yeah, and I understand your question, but the truth is that it's thermodynamics. If you eat more calories than you burn, you're going to gain weight. If you eat fewer calories than you burn, you're going to lose weight. And so the metabolism is really not that significant when it comes to whole natural foods. Okay. Is there another question here? Yeah.
What do you consider the ideal blood pressure? And if a person's blood pressure is lower than that, do you recommend steps to increase it? And I have a second question. Yep. Can you talk more about the enzymes that you said was a benefit?
Got it. So the perfect blood pressure is around the range of 93/64, which is, right, the newer blood pressure guidelines came out and they were saying instead of 120/80, now it's 110/70. And it's, again, that's going to be dependent on person's size, their body weight, their age. So if someone's a little older, their blood pressure may be okay if it's a little higher. But yeah, so that would be ideal. If someone has lower blood pressure, typically, if they have a sodium imbalance, then those are the rare people where we might include salt into their diet if it's getting to pathological levels. If it turns out that somebody is, has other issues other than blood pressure, for example, they may have irritable bowel syndrome, or they may have just run down, they need a short fast, then their blood pressure drops a little bit while they're fasting, but it stays about the same when they're done, and it's no problem. The second question was about enzyme induction. When your enzymes get a break, it's kind of beyond the scope of this, but we can talk later. But essentially, when your enzymes are designed to do all kinds of different things. So there's metabolic enzymes, there's digestive enzymes. The ones that we take at the store and the supplements, those are the digestive enzymes. The metabolic enzymes are the ones that if they really go out there and they get out of balance, then what happens is you get run down, you get tired, you get these detoxification mechanisms don't happen as quickly, and so fasting allows that to happen a lot quicker. Okay, so that's what. Well, I'll send you the information about that because it's a kind of a longer discussion. So, question.
You mentioned about low blood pressure. Since I was in high school, and now they always say I have low blood pressure, but I'm okay. What do you consider low blood pressure, or why? Yeah, the definition of low blood pressure is a blood pressure below 90/60. So, doctors may say if you have below 110/70 or below 100/60, but the lower the blood pressure within that range is actually less risk of heart disease and stroke. So high blood pressure is the #1 predictor of all-cause mortality. So it means death from everything. And so if you have a blood pressure of 136/84, for example, you have 5 times greater risk of having a stroke than someone who has 110/70 blood pressure. Okay? But you're not having high blood pressure enough to justify medications. So your doctor might say, oh, your blood pressure's a little bit high, work on that. But you're still quite a bit risky for getting stroke. So when people come in with low blood pressure, usually it's thinner, smaller people. It would have to depend on what's going on in their physiology. If that's the only thing and they're just, smaller frame, then it could, it's just dependent on everybody's individuality. Yeah. Any other questions? Question.
Would you consider that intermittent diet is also part of fasting? Because I eat my dinner at 4 and my breakfast is at 8, which is 16 hours later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an intermittent fast, everybody does an intermittent fast here. You just do it from the time that you sleep to the time you wake up. Okay, so you might do a 6-hour intermittent fast where your feeding window is 18 hours. You eat breakfast at 7 or 8 or 9, then you eat dinner at 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever. Okay, so everybody does a form of intermittent fasting. The problem is, if we are going to be eating whatever we want in that window, then the fast really doesn't have that many benefits. Okay, so I would focus more on the food than I'm focusing on what time you're eating. It's going to turn out that it doesn't matter when you eat if you're eating the right foods. Okay, so that's, we can talk more specific detail, but that's what I have to say about intermittent fasting. It can be pretty helpful for people to kind of know, okay, well, after 6 p.m. I don't eat, and that kind of helps them stay away from the cycle of binging some of the junk food at night, which can happen. And so that's where it's useful. But as far as restricting your food just arbitrarily, and then you can eat whatever in between, the point is we want to use this to get to healthy, natural foods. Question? Yeah.
Just one more question. My cousin has low blood sugar, and she hadn't had it for 25 years. Now she's got it again. And so what is that from? She's been stressed out and got dehydrated. How does she get rid of this low blood sugar, I mean?
I'd have to talk to her, take her full medical history, run some blood tests, you know, see kind of the whole picture. I really can't comment on what she's dealing with just from what you said, because there could be a lot of different issues. Yeah.
Hello? Yes, I'm sorry. Would you consider treating a 94-age patient? The doctor said everything is okay except the blood pressure.
Except what?
Except the blood pressure.
Yeah, I would consider that.
You do?
I'll tell you a story, guys. I had a young man at the ripe age of 81 who, well, let me see how I can change this to preserve confidentiality. So this man had a problem that nobody could figure out, and this person had prostate cancer. Okay, and his PSA was close to 70. It should never be above 4. Okay. He did a 6-day water fast. We retested it after 6 days, and it was back to 33. Okay. But sometimes water fasting can do that. So we had him eat the food for another week and retest it. His PSA went to 21. Okay. We're going to get a follow-up, a 3-month follow-up after that, and then see if we can write it up in a medical journal. So yeah, the age can be a factor depending on the medical history. But if everything else is fine, you come talk to me and we'll see what we can do. But yeah, age is something that I wouldn't let stop me if everything else is okay. And that's also why we take blood tests beforehand, to make sure that everything else is okay. Okay, just to make sure that it's safe to do so. Question? Yeah.
What is the longest length of time you do at Fast 4 down here at the Fasting Escape?
I can fast people anywhere from 5 to 40 days. Okay, depend on what they're fasting for, and if we say 40 days at the very first day, we can change that, because sometimes day 30 comes around, and we've taken blood tests and say, okay, your kidneys and your enzymes and all that stuff, it's not doing so well. We're going to break the fast. Okay, so 5 to 40 days is kind of where we're comfortable at.